Welcome everybody. I'm going to give people just a few minutes to join in here. I'm sitting with Tammy Cummings, sitting virtually with Tammy Cummings. My name is Ryan Tagg. If you've attended any of the webinars before, you may know who I am, but I've been with Dominion Payroll about 5 years now. I work primarily with our existing client base to explain the services and products that we have to offer. And Tammy, if you wouldn't mind, do a quick introduction of who you are.
Sure. Thank you, Ryan. I'm so happy to be with you guys today. This is really an honor to be asked by Dominion Payroll to be a part of this. You guys have been a wonderful vendor of ours over the years, and so it's really nice to have this collaboration together to talk about community engagement. Maybe before I tell you a little bit about who I am, I'll tell you a little bit about how I got really interested in community engagement. So back in the day, right out of college, I was working for a company called GTE, which most of you now know as Verizon, and I was in public affairs. And part of our role was community engagement, and I was asked to lead a volunteer dropout or a high school dropout prevention volunteer program. And I'd never really volunteered or did anything in community engagement, but we taught our employees how to go in and do presentations on dropout prevention. And I remember I would read the reviews of every instructor, and I would go through, 25 kids and their reviews every time. And each time, 24 of those would be your typical 8th grade student that really kind of said, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. But there would always be that one student in every class that said, Mr. Jones, who was our teacher today, really stopped me from dropping out of high school.
Wow.
And it was at that moment that I realized, when you get involved in community engagement, you really have to understand that a lot of what you do may not make a huge impact or seemingly make a huge impact on that day or that moment. But at the end of the day, if you impact one person's life in a lifetime or one person's life in a year, that's a huge opportunity. So most of my career after that was spent in large for-profit organizations where I was either in PR, marketing, or human resources, and later became sort of the chief HR officer for lots of large organizations like the Federal Reserve and Tredegar, Ironworks, and EAB. So most of my career was in for-profit, and then fast forward about 35 years. Now I'm at Feedmore as the Chief Administrative Officer, and it was always a vision and a dream to work for a nonprofit and sort of be on the other side, although we still do a lot of community engagement and outreach ourselves here at Feedmore. But so that's kind of who I am. I oversee our volunteer services, our HR, our technology, and I'm working on our new building. So we're going to be building a new building out in Henrico County. It's already started actually, and we'll be in a new facility about a year from now over by St. Joseph's Villa.
Oh, that's exciting. Are you all still in you saw the location in Scott's Addition? That's still there?
Yeah, we're still in the Road Miller facility, the 100-plus-year-old tobacco warehouse. And so we need something that's a little bit more space, a little bit more efficient, a little bit more welcoming to our volunteers. So we're super excited about what the new facility is going to do for us.
Well, that's very exciting. So with that in mind, you're building a new facility, getting things in line. What are you building this new facility for? I mean, what is Feedmore? What's their mission? Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you who aren't aware of Feedmore, we are Central Virginia's food bank, and we like to say that we are not the largest food bank in the country, but we are actually one of the most complex food banks in the country. Most food banks, and there's over 190 of them that are affiliated with Feeding America, are organizations that typically are sort of food in, food out organizations. We here in Richmond, we service 29 counties and 5 cities, And we have not only our food bank, which services over 250 what we call agency partners. So if you think about your church food pantry or the Chesterfield Food Bank or the Henrico County Food Bank, all of those are agency partners of ours, and we support them and provide food, provide food to the clients in the community. And so we have that arm, and then we also have our Meals on Wheels organization and a community kitchen. So we provide meals to senior citizens and homebound individuals who can't leave their home, and we have drivers who go and deliver meals, and sort of we call it a meals and more approach, because a lot of times those folks aren't seeing other people in the community other than our Meals on Wheels delivery folks. So we have a very large, complex organization. We only have about 100 employees, but we usually have about 200 volunteer shifts a day. So usually we're somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 volunteers every year. And so you might ask, well, wow, why do you need so many people? Well, 1 in 9 Central Virginians are estimated to have food insecurity, and 1 in 6, that's adults, and 1 in 6 children. So if you can imagine that there are a lot of folks out there who are in need of food, and certainly, during the pandemic and during certain periods economically in our country, we find that ebbs and flows. But we are here to serve the food insecure. That's really our mission.
That's great. I mean, and 1 out of 6, I mean, kids in particular, you're talking about tens of thousands, if not, hundreds of thousands of potentially kids. Am I right in saying that?
Absolutely. Yes. Thousands of children. And so our kids programs are extremely important. We have backpack programs where we help send food home with children at school, and we have summer programs. Some of you may have seen our Feed More Freddy bus, which we just named, and that bus goes into food insecure areas where kids can actually get on the bus and do their own grocery shopping. So kids are a large target audience for what we do.
That's great. And you mentioned some of the ebbs and flows, and you and I were talking a little bit about, the pandemic and that. I'm sure the amount of people that needed help probably increased during that, but you'd mentioned that, it was difficult getting volunteers, and the community engagement piece was a little bit more difficult. Did you all find any creative ways to deal with that, or kind of, drag yourself out of that situation a little bit?
Well, I just can't thank the folks in the community enough. So yes, Feed More was creative, but so were our volunteers, right? So we had organizations just like Dominion Payroll. You and I were talking about this before it started, that said, wow, we can't go into an organization and volunteer, but we can do a food drive here at work and bring in cans of food, which is always really critical. But, when you're a food bank, you can't shut down. So
Yeah.
we were very meticulous about making sure that all of our employees and our volunteers were masked and screened and healthy. And, we had a lot of people who were regular volunteers, and we have volunteers who've been here for 25 and 30 years. And many of them kept coming right through the pandemic. So yeah, we were just very fortunate to be on the receiving end of good organizations and good people who had their own personal and company engagement strategies.
Yeah, and I think during something like that, it's pretty obvious why the importance of pulling together as a community and helping one another. An extreme example like that, it's easy to point to why that's important. But what would you say is the significance of community engagement when we're not dealing with some kind of extraordinary event or just daily life?
Yeah. Well, like I said, most of my career, I was on the for-profit side, and I was constantly looking at, it's sort of an HR person's dream, right? To have an engaged and happy workforce.
Sure.
So I was always looking at what's the right community engagement strategy, and what does that look like for our organization? And so maybe just start by, we'll sort of define community engagement, right? So to me, community engagement is really an opportunity for an organization or an individual to really impact a need or a geographic need or a health need, lots of needs in the community, but more from a strategic perspective. It's truly a strategy, right? And so when you think about that from a business perspective, I was reading the other day that there's 25% of American adults actually are involved in either volunteering or some type of community engagement. So when you think about that, if you add all those hours up, that equated to $123 billion in economic services for the US. And here at Feedmore, we do our own math around that. And so for us, our volunteer services equates to about $4 million for us every year in terms of labor. We call it our secret endowment. So when you think about businesses and why it's important, so economically, I believe all boats rise, right? If you're helping your community, all boats rise. So you want to be involved and engaged in an organization or in a community that's impacted in a positive way by the economy. And so economically, it's really important for businesses to have an engagement strategy. The other thing, again, from an HR perspective, we know time and time again that all the studies show that employees who feel more engaged in the community at work are happier, and happier employees are more productive. So again, super, super important to do that. And I understand, I think there's a lot of smaller and mid-sized companies on this call, and I was really surprised in doing some research that only about 10% of small and mid-sized companies have a really strong community engagement strategy.
Wow.
And so I think there's a huge opportunity in our community to get smaller and more mid-sized companies really involved, because again, it's not only good for the economy, but it's also good for their business, right? Because if you look at our workforce today, it's about 47% Gen Z. And if you talk to anybody who's Gen Z, they're going to tell you that one of the ways they determine who they're going to apply to work with and where they're going to stay in an organization is whether or not they have a good community engagement or corporate social responsibility strategy. So there's the economy part of it. There's the how do we keep our employees happy and engaged part of it. And then the other aspect of why businesses really need to get involved is that it is a true health strategy, right? So Doug Pick, our CEO, often talks about how Aristotle, I think it was, I'm going to look up the exact quote, said that what is the essence of life? It's to serve others and do good, right? And so what we know about doing good is it produces serotonin and dopamine. And so both mentally and physically, it helps our body. We know that in older adults who volunteer, they're about 25% less likely to get severely ill and die than people who don't volunteer. We know that people who volunteer have better social relationships and social and sort of mental health overall. They're just happier people. So, the three good reasons I always tell everybody that you need to have either a personal or a business strategy about how you're going to get involved in your community is economically, it helps you. From a performance perspective, it helps you. And from a health perspective, it definitely helps you.
Wow, I had no idea. I mean, the list kept going. Like some of those were, I was like, oh yeah, of course. But the health impacts, I hadn't really thought about that, particularly for people that potentially retired. That's very impactful and good to know. I mean, especially the economic side of things. Is there any specific example of the success story, I guess, either from volunteering or Feedmore's actions in the community that you could share with us?
Sure. So when I start, I've only been at Feedmore for about 3 years now. And so most food banks across the country, their main strategy is what we call feeding the line, right? So that just means they're There are people who suffer from food insecurity, and their goal is to feed them, right? Which is a great goal to have. And one of the things we know is in an era where you can't get a lot of people to agree on a lot of things, all of the major religions in the world agree on one thing: feeding the hungry is the right thing to do, right? So that had really been our core mission at Feed More, was to feed the line for many, many years. We decided about 3 years ago that we were going to add another piece to that strategy, which we called shorten the line, which means how do we get in front of food insecurity to try to help make sure that people don't have to suffer from food insecurity? And that's a big strategy, right? That's a big ask. But we put in place a health initiatives strategy, which is a part of our own community engagement strategy. And we partnered with Capital One and CarMax to do some data analytics for us to help us better identify areas within our serving area that have food insecurity or have the potential for food insecurity. We partner with a lot of major health providers in the area, so Anthem and health associated companies like McKesson and others, who are trying to help us understand how do we get inside organizations like hospitals and clinics, and how do we reduce diabetes through diet and understanding more about food insecurity. And so, one of the things we're most proud of now is that strategy is really taking off. And we're really, I'm looking forward to kind of looking back on this in 2 or 3 years and just seeing all the impacts. But that's probably one of our bigger, most recent success stories that maybe people aren't as aware of. On a small scale, though, in terms of talking to some of the smaller, more mid-sized folks who are on this call, even doing small things is important. And so we decided that we wanted to make sure our employees knew that they could go out and get involved in the community and things that were more closely aligned with their own values and their own heart, and also just kind of give them a little bit of a break from food insecurity. So we implemented some volunteer days. And so now, in addition to their PTO, we've implemented volunteer time off, and we're really encouraging our own employees to get out into the community to serve as well.
That's great. How do you introduce, is there any particular way that you go about introducing your employees to other opportunities outside of, because I do see what you mean, like it could probably be a little emotionally draining, I would imagine, having to do that kind of work, and they may be looking for other opportunities. Is there any kind of way that you explore that for them or allow access for them to explore on their own?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the first step is really just understanding that they're all individuals. We have a very diverse workforce. And so we created an employee engagement council so that folks know that they can bring their interests forward to the council. We also, like I said, we implemented the time off. We share a lot of what other nonprofits in our community are doing and are in need of through our own internal communications. And the main thing is just really encouraging and supporting it, So I think the key is every single one of our senior leaders is very active in their own way in the community. Right now, we have a big thing going for Mustaches for Kids. And while that group supports us and some of that funding comes back our way, we also want to support them. So we really try to do a diverse set of activities to sort of help our folks know that not only are they free to just go read at their child's school, or they can get involved in something that's sort of tangentially affiliated with food insecurity that's really up to them. They have some choice.
Well, I think that's such a good thing too, because there are so many opportunities out there to help, and at the end of the day, that is really, I'm sure your goal, Feedmore's goal, right, is to get people more engaged and helping. And we'll definitely, if you have, Tammy, if you haven't seen this before, we do have, it's included with whenever any client is with Dominion Payroll. It's a platform called Giving and Volunteering. It is, like I said, included. There's no additional cost for this. It allows employees to make donations directly through payroll, and then also search for new volunteer opportunities. So
Wow. I've been with you guys all this time and I never knew that. So definitely want all that information. Please share. That sounds great.
yeah, I was just about to, I just asked Laura if I could share my screen here. I'll show you what it looks like, but perfect. And look at that, she just did it for me. So in here, this kind of leads, can you see the screen? Perfect. So right in here, like I said, I made the featured nonprofit for this week is Feed More. So when employees go to log in, and they can do this from their ESS platform, they can make donations directly, like I said, through payroll. This can either be, one time, and we'll go ahead and just do it right here real quick for it. So on my next check, $20 will automatically be deducted and go directly to Feed More. As you can see, it also takes care of any administrative fees. But then if your employees are interested in looking for more opportunities, there's a lot listed in here. And if there's one that is close to your heart and it's not listed, a local nonprofit that for whatever reason isn't included in the list, we can always get it added for you. I know that some of our—
That's amazing. That's awesome. I had no idea, so I'm so glad to know.
Yeah, it's probably, I mean, well, good. I'm sorry we haven't done a better job sharing that with y'all. And if anybody on the call or Tammy yourself want to take a deeper dive into that and learn how to you can set it up, it makes it super easy to kind of find other opportunities and then make donations to Feed More. Well, Tammy, I just want to thank you so much for the time today. And for anyone else on the call, we do an annual food drive for Feed More every year, right around the holidays. So you can drop off your donations right at Dominion Payroll, or they're not too far from us, or directly with them too if you want. But we'll be doing that during the holidays. And Tammy, if anybody's interested in volunteering with Feed More, or has any interest in that, could you tell us a little bit about how to connect with y'all?
Sure, absolutely. First, I'll just say we have well over 20 volunteer opportunities.
Oh, wow.
So it's everything from driving Meals on Wheels routes to working in our community kitchen to doing children's programs to actually skill-based volunteers. So what that means is if you're a professional writer, photographers, just want to give your time and talent to an organization, we often partner in that way as well. So we have lots of opportunities. The best way to learn what we do, we use a software called Volunteer Matters, but if you go to feedmore.org and you click on volunteerism, it will take you to our Volunteer Matters system, and you can sign up, and one of our volunteer, actually our volunteer recruiters, people who volunteer here in a professional way, will reach out and talk with the potential volunteer about what their interests are and get them set up. And then once you're in Volunteer Matters, you can actually go out and sign yourself up for open shifts. And I know we're coming on the holidays and everyone wants to volunteer. And I remember before I worked at Feed More, I tried to do this and I was a little disappointed because it's like you get all excited and then you go out and all the shifts are filled up. So I would just encourage folks to know that if you want to volunteer for the holidays, a lot of those shifts might be filling up quickly, but please don't hesitate to volunteer after the holidays, because that's kind of when we have that lull, right? That everybody's done their good deed for the holiday and then they're ready to move on. And when we really need folks is, starting in January, February, March, and really the rest of the year. So, I would just encourage everybody to go check us out.
Yeah, that's great, Tammy. Thank you so much. And just to leave everybody with thought, just a couple of things that Tammy mentioned, 1 in 6 people that are struggling with food scarcity are children. And she also mentioned senior citizens. That typically is a really underserved part of our community. And, Tammy touched on the fact that it's not just the fact that they could potentially be hungry, but lonely too. And so you're really serving two purposes there. So Feed More does such great things in our community. If you can find an opportunity to volunteer or simply to donate, whether that's food, money, whatever, Dominion Payroll is here to help. We'll make that portal available to you if you want it. So Tammy, thank you again so much. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to either of us, right? I'm putting you out there, Tammy, just in case anybody reaches out.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And Ryan, thank you and your entire team, Laura and the whole team at Dominion for what you guys are doing. I mean, like I said, as a former chief HR officer, I can just tell you this is just a great service to offer some, these kinds of programs from just an informational perspective and a developmental perspective. So thank you guys for everything you're doing for our community. It's a really great service that you're offering.
Well, thank you, Tammy. I appreciate it. And thanks so much for being a client and just a really good organization for the Richmond community and abroad. So if anybody needs anything, please feel free to reach out to me. If you want more information about giving and volunteering, connection to Tammy, or information about a few more, please reach out and let me know, okay? Thank you all so much, and I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you again, Tammy.
Thank you, Ryan. Take care. Everybody have a great day.
Bye.